Good morning, everybody. I see, thank you for joining our webinar today. I see people are jumping on in droves at the moment. So welcome, everybody. We'll just give it a few minutes while everybody's starting to connect in, if that's okay. And we shall get things going as soon as we possibly can. So, yeah, people are coming in. So I might just start to introduce the process for today. So firstly, just hello and welcome. Welcome to the next edition of the Restoring the Future, Healing Countries Through Traditional Knowledge webinar. My name's Scott Anderson. I'm the CEO of Many Nations Limited, chairperson of Mungala Aboriginal Corporation for Business up in Ingham on Ngawagi country, but also the co-chair of Greening Australia, Greening Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee. So really want to thank everybody for coming in today. But before we do begin, I certainly would like to welcome traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and acknowledge their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and any other Indigenous people who have joined us today. So thank you and for coming in, and we acknowledge your part of country. We have guests dialing in from all around Australia today, so I invite you all to start to introduce yourself in the chat box there. That'll be great. Certainly acknowledging country and where you're coming from today. If you are putting stuff in the chat, unless you please just respond to everybody, just so that we get an opportunity to see all your messages and that as well. And particularly if there's questions, we can start to respond to those as we get through to the question and answer component later on as part of our webinar. In this webinar, we're really looking to discuss how traditional knowledge can heal country and help to create a more sustainable future. So, you know, a topic that's really quite dear to my heart personally, but also to our two special guests today and our panelists. So I'd like to introduce everybody to our panelists today, and they are Alice Pepper and Jacob Cassidy. So Alice is a Gunai, Gundadmara, Yorta Yorta, Muddy and Aranda woman. She's an artist. She's a cultural hub community engagement coordinator from the Gunai Kunai Land and Water Aboriginal Corporation, and is a member for the Southeast Region First Peoples Assembly of Victoria. So welcome, Alice. Great to have you on board today. Also would like to acknowledge and welcome Jacob Cassidy. Jacob and I work very close together. We are both descendants of Ngawagi, but Jacob is a Ngawagi and Munbra traditional owner, descendant from both those groups, Munbra and Palm Island, and is also the managing director of Mungala Aboriginal Corporation for Business, which operates Mungala Station up at Forest Beach, just outside of Ingham. So today we will be running a Q&A with our panelists and really digging into their first-hand experience and knowledge around working on country. So I invite you to use the chat box once again to post any questions throughout the discussion, and we'll get to as many as we can in the last 15 minutes of our webinar today. So before I ask our panelists and start to get a bit more insight from them, I'd like to maybe set a little bit of context for today's discussion. In early November, most of us would have heard around the government and delegates that gathered in Glasgow to debate, to negotiate, to compromise, and to make commitments towards accelerated action on the world's twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. In the deluge of all the analysis that's come out, you know, post COP26, there's been a whole range of takeaway articles that have followed. You know, we may have felt a little bit overwhelmed by all the information and certainly some confusion around you know, where to focus for us here in Australia, but also particularly as First Nations people here in Australia. And so I think it would be really easy for us to kind of miss, you know, some of that really important sentiment. And I'd like to echo and to repeat the words, I guess, of Pastor Ray Minikine. So Pastor Ray is a Cubby Cubby man and Gorang senior traditional owner. But it would be a mistake to not really hear his powerful and timely message, which I want to repeat today to set the scene for our discussion. So I'm going to read what he said post that COP26. So Pastor Ray, really highlighted the importance of listening to traditional knowledge, really saying that in Australian Indigenous philosophy, we walk backwards into the future on the footprints of our ancestors who have shown and taught us. So we do the same things that they have done for millennia. They show and teach us how to look after country, and that we're in harmony basically with Earth and with one another. These last words about being in harmony speak to the importance, really of understanding and listening to the connection that people and between people and country. What we also do know is, strong people and strong country have a clear link, and that's reversed. Strong country, and if we have strong people, we have strong country. And if we have strong country, we have strong people. So it's really interlinked and connected. There are a lot of synergies for First Peoples, communities and economies that emerge from restoring and healing country in ways that engage and respect traditional knowledge. And we'll be, talking to our panelists today really around some of their experience in that space. I'd also like to note that this week, Greening Australia, received formal endorsement of their very first Reconciliation Action Plan from Reconciliation Australia. The plan outlines, direct actions with Greening Australia that will be delivered over the next 2 years towards their vision of reconciliation. Healthy and productive landscapes, enabling Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, cultures and enterprise to thrive on country. The Reconciliation Action Plan will be available to view on Greening Australia's website by the end. It's actually up there today. And in fact, tomorrow, all participants on the webinar will receive an email, and you'll also receive a link to the Reconciliation Action Plan. And so a lot of work's gone into that. So, we are privileged to have both Alice and Jacob join us today. And as I'm learning more about Alice and certainly reflecting on the work that I've done with Jacob, it's, it's really an honor for us to be able to sit and listen to these, two individuals who have done considerable work in this space. So really, without any further ado, I'd really like to just introduce both of them now and really just start to ask them some questions. So welcome, Alice, and welcome, Jacob. Alice, I might start with you, if I may, please, as we do, traditionally, culturally, just tell us a bit about yourself and, certainly where you're from. I have spoken about that, but tell us about yourself and where you're from, and certainly the environmental challenges that you've witnessed in your local area.
Turn myself off mute. Yep. Firstly, I'd just like to say, young guy, Nektul Makta Yakan Rukut, Alice Pepper. As you said, I'm from the Gungi Jamara, Gunai, Yordi Yorda, Muddy Muddy, and Aranda peoples. Naju Gunim Budget and Do Gunai Kernai, from our clans of the Crow Tangalung, the Tatangalung, the Bribiralung, the Brayakalung, and the Brotormalung. I also would like to pay my respects to our ancestors, both past and present. Those here from other countries, acknowledge you also, and our young emerging leaders. As you said, I'm Community Engagement Coordinator for GLOAG here at, and I work in the Department of the Cultural Hub. And I'm also a First Peoples Assembly member for the Southeast region, working towards developing a framework for treaty in Victoria. Gunai Kurnai people are traditional owners of Gippsland, who were recognised in 2010 and granted native title under the Traditional Owner Settlement Act, which was the first agreement in Victoria under that Act. And in 2020, we were also recognised and given water rights as well. Our settlement under the Native Title Act gave us access and recognition to joint manage 10 parks across our country here. And the announcement in 2020 was a really great one for us to manage the flow of 2 gigalitres which we didn't know what 2 gigalitres meant when it was announced, but it's a lot of water along the Mitchell River. Again, another first in Victoria for traditional owner groups. So, you know, our people have been here for over 65,000 years, looking after country, working country, as you mentioned before, Scott. You know, our land and waters, we're still here. We're practicing our culture and traditions. One of the oldest living cultures in the world, and you know, we have never ceded those rights as Southern people. So some of the recent things that you know, environmental challenges in our parts of the country and most of the southeast, as you was been aware of, you know, the bushfires and the huge challenges that, you know, that created, and also opportunity it has created for our people to go out in country and help be a part of the healing that needs to happen from those devastations, and discover the sites that has been uncovered. We also able to monitor the wildlife and re-veg areas to help our plants and animals return. You know, we've got teams here, we're part of bushfire recovery that work with a number of land management departments towards healing our country and monitoring the wildlife and restoring our landscapes. So that's a big lot of work that will happen, you know, for many years to come. And, you know, it's really good for our people to be at the forefront of those, you know, activities on country. So that's one of the challenges. Also, you know, the loss of our animals and that from the land, our totem animals, and that has been very difficult and traumatizing for us to see that happen, as they're, you know, part of us, part of our culture, part of our landscape, and part of who we are as Aboriginal people. So to be a part of that healing is healing for us as well. Some of the other things, you know, the bogong moth in the past recent years, it's very significant to our Gunai people and neighbouring clans. You know, in the mountains, there's been a decline in the bogong moth migrating to our country from other areas, which is, you know, a main food source for the pygmy possum in the mountains there, which is a main food source for them. So we've seen a decline in that, and the possum and the bogong are very significant to our people of Gunai Kurnai and the neighbouring clans. Stories that have been passed down to us from generations. You know, we use possum skins for warmth in the cooler season, and for some of us, our totem, but also the bogong moth was a food source for our people as well, and a symbol of our people coming together from different clans and gathering for that food source. So, so that's a few challenges. And in recent times, our traditional knowledge holders have worked with science in Monash Uni and have uncovered cultural deposits, you know, in caves and rock shelters, you know, that have sort of confirmed what we've known for thousands of years. But when science catches up to what we've known for years, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So
I'll get you to hold that thought about science and traditional knowledge. We'll certainly come back to that. I think it's a really kind of interesting proposition. But I might just throw it to you now, Jacob. You know, again, just, you know, tell. We'll be sending out a case study, you know, that showcases the work that Mungullis Station has done on, you know, restoring wetlands up there, and particularly through the Reef Aid project through Greening Australia. But, you know, just tell us a bit about you know, your background, I guess, Jacob, and you know, what some of the environmental challenges that you've seen that are, you know, most pressing where you're at right now.
Yeah, well, first of all, welcome to everybody, and I'm off mute, am I?
You are, yes.
Yeah. Welcome to everybody, and thanks for coming on. My name, as Scott mentioned, Jacob Cassidy, and I'm a Nawagi Mumbra man. I'm married with about 6 kids, I think, from last
You had to
count.
count. You had to count, eh?
But look, I was like born and bred here, and just to give everybody a bit of a snapshot of where we are. We're probably about an hour and a half north of Townsville, maybe 3 hours south of Cairns. We live in a wonderful part of Australia in the Herbert River Valley. The main industry here is sugar. In this region, there are 9 different nations. And my grandfather's country is where I'm sitting on today, Mangala Station. So our traditional owner group have a 880 hectare cattle property, and the property lays adjacent to a Great Barrier Reef Marine Park lagoon. So we've got some really extensive and pretty amazing sea country. And opposite our where we are is my grandmother's country on the Mumbra people of Palm Island. And I've got to say, one of the this property has been handed back to the Nawagi people in the last 21 years. I think this is 21 years we've had it back. And since we got it back, we inherited a lot of the bad farming practices over the last 150 years ago since colonisation in the Herbert River Valley. A large part of Mangala Station is wetland area. And I guess the thing for me personally is understanding how country works and the impacts that we have on it, and the relationship between land and sea. Sometimes that gets a bit blurred, but for Aboriginal people, it's one country, land and sea. No matter what you do on land, it'll have an effect on our sea country. And a lot of that goes back to even today with the water quality and the water quality of country going out to our sea. And I guess one of the alarming things for me, and it shouldn't be alarming not only for me as a traditional owner, but it should be alarming for not only our regional community, but it should be alarming for the global community, because basically of the state of the Great Barrier Reef. Now, as a lot of us know, since records have been taken of the Great Barrier Reef, it has never been in its worst state. Through coral bleaching, through poor water quality, through severe weather events or whatever, it has never been in its worst state, which should, which should be alarming to the global community. The thing that we've done here, that's had a bit of impact on the Great Barrier Reef, is improving that water quality. And we've done some great work with Greening Australia and other organisations, but it's understanding about the function, I guess, of wetlands and waterways, and what our people inherited here when we got this property back was virtual wetlands just inundated with weeds of national significance. I mean, one of the big ones was hibernacne, brought in from South America, initially for cattle feed. And it was just so aggressive that it covered the water surface, outcompeted any native species by far. It sucked all the oxygen out of the water, so it had an impact on fish, that had an impact on the bird life. And I guess one of the things that Aboriginal people really understand, if you got sick country, you're going to have sick people. Healthy country means healthy people. And we tried a number of very different methods, including poison and, spraying chemicals on sensitive wetland area. I wasn't a great fan of that. We did traditional burning and all this sort of stuff, but it was an actual a combination of both traditional knowledge and science, and just some practical thinking that we were able to begin to restore wetland and undo a lot of the damage that had been done. And one of the first initial biodiversity project in restoring a wetland, we mechanically removed those man-made bun walls and allowed the natural flow of saline water into the wetlands the way that God intended it to be. And it had a dramatic effect. The weeds they couldn't tolerate the salt water. And what we've seen within a year, the disappearance of any weeds that came in contact with salt water. And it literally, we took numerous tests and that prior to the removal of bun walls, and found no fish at all. Only for, I think it was a couple of species of introduced species of fish, but there was literally no native fish at all. And the bird life was non-existent, virtually non-existent. I can remember going down there years ago and seeing lots of birds, but because the birds, there was little fish, there wasn't even much surface of water. So these weeds have had a significant impact. And of course, the water quality wasn't too good. In this region, in this local region, sugarcane is the biggest industry. And I guess a lot of problems go back to early colonisation. When Queensland wanted to open up North Queensland, they offered these lease agreements to pastoralists and the early settlers. But one of the things, the main thing that the early settlers had to do is they couldn't take land on speculative purposes. They had to develop the land, or seem to be developing the land on this lease country. And in the minds of those early settlers, to be fixing the country or using the country meant that you had to clear it. And a lot of clearing was done of trees, native trees, and they cleared the country right to the edge of the creeks. And of course, when we had the high rainfalls and the sediment build up, creeks became clogged up, and over time introduced weeds that add to the problem. So what you have is waterways clogged up, wetland clogged up, mangrove systems not functioning. And if you look at the country like it was a body, your veins would be clogged up. Your kidneys aren't functioning because they're clogged up with all these invasive species of weeds. So our wetlands, we inherited, when we got this country back, we inherited all these major problems. And just getting back to that biodiversity project, once we opened up those wetlands, allowed the natural flow of salt water to come back in, the results were dramatic. After only 12 months, I think we had little or no weeds of national significance. There was open water, birds were starting to come back. We took samples of fish and found that there was barramundi and mangrove jacks, along with a whole range of different species, and it began to heal itself. And within another year, there was native bulgaroo growing back there, which was phenomenal. since the bird life has come back, we've also, through our partners at Breeding Australia and BirdLife Australia, began documenting the bird life here. On this small cattle property in North Queensland, we have more aquatic bird species than the entire Kakadu National Park on this little property. So we talk about healing country. We've got to a huge responsibility. You know, sometimes I think the horse is already bolted, and I think, you know, when I look at things environmentally, I'm thinking, well, how, you know, it seems such a mountain. And but there's two things we've got to do, and one thing we've still got to continue to chip away and address environmental issues that affect us and affect the country around us. But the main thing we got to do is really impart what I call an environmental conscience in the young people and the kids coming through. We run tours here on this property. We've been doing tours for about 16 years here, and a lot of tours that we do, we always take our guests down and expose them to the work that we're doing. And we even allow university groups and school groups to, you know, help our re-veg programs and all that sort of stuff. But it's really about imparting an environmental conscience in our young people, where they begin to understand and feel country. And that's what we've got to do. Aboriginal people have been doing this for thousands of years. And
Jacob, I might, yeah, I mean, amazing story and an amazing description of what's kind of happening up there. But I might just, Alice, I might get you to come into the now. I mean, Jacob started to talk about, you know, reinvigorating country and, you know, obviously connecting that to traditional story and knowledge. But for you, you know, can you describe, you know, what are some of the practical examples that you've seen maybe in your country of how traditional knowledge is being used to restore or to heal country? And you referred to, you know, already, you know, the impact that's having on animals, and Jacob refers to that as well. So, yeah, can you describe that for us, or, you know, what's your take on, you know, those examples of traditional knowledge around and healing country?
Yeah, just adding on to what Uncle Jacob said around, you know, we look around. I think it's something that's been instilled in us, you know, as Aboriginal people, First Nation people. You know, we have to look after the land, and if the land's sick, then we're sick, you know, look after our mother, and I love that. I've heard that many times from my elders and that. But yeah, like in terms of restoring parts of the country, it's not just about the landscape and making it look pretty. You know, by having traditional owners, traditional custodians part of the process, and leading those concepts and conversations at the beginning, it's a relationship that's formed with other land management groups. And then, you know, there's a trust that you build there that helps us open up and share our knowledge, which is, you know, very sacred to us, because as Uncle said, it's been passed down for thousands and thousands of generations. So when we're looking at restoring, you know, we're looking at exactly, you know, looking at what's not meant to be there, what's been introduced, and looking at how we can put and, you know, grow and put what is meant to be there that, you know, has a whole circle of life in terms of the right plants, you know, near the sea, you know, near the ocean, and that, you know, that our animals feed off, that picks up the, you know, the insects and the bugs that feed the fish that, you know, flourish through that whole water, you know, ecosystem, helps that sort of circulate. So, you know, having that, you know, when we're restoring, putting that educational element to when, you know, what we're doing on country, so that younger people are learning, and they do have that environmental conscious but it's not just healing country that contributes to healing each other, our mental health, our healing for ourselves, because we see country healing. We're able to do the things on country that, you know, we love to do, and, you know, we're taking each other on a journey through using the cultural knowledge, adding that into developments on country. You know, we're all on this journey together, and it's something where doesn't matter what nationality you're from or where you're from, it's something that we all need and we all have in common to survive is our land, waters, and if we, you know, and making sure that, you know, healing is every part of our, you know, activity on country. So, you know, when bushfires happened, I think, you know, the buzzword around was, oh, you know, we need to do cultural burnings and things like that. And it was, you know, it was a big buzzword, and you know, all acknowledgement to our knowledge holders across the country said, you know, hang on, we can't just go out and do cultural burnings. There's right, you know, burners for different things at right time. So that started a great conversation, you know, which now has, you know, implemented strategies and knowledge from, you know, different parts of country, you know, different climates, different things introduced and that happened from colonisation, like Uncle Jacob just mentioned before, that you can't just do it all cultural burnings and that's going to look up, that's going to prevent fire. So just a little bit of, you know, right way of managing country and having our traditional custodians in partnership to move forward, because our mother is, we've got to look after her, and in turn she look after us. Yeah.
So just another quick question, I guess, or an example of how that might work. Tell us about examples of how our old people, we've spoken about our young people, but, you know, what's it been like for you, or has there been examples of getting our old people back out onto country, maybe after being separated from country, or maybe country hasn't been healthy? Have either of you had that experience, getting our old people back out on country, back out on healthy country, or any country? Tell us a bit about that. I'm interested.
So just, yeah, you know, having been able to have our water rights and that given back to us in some parts of country, we've been able to get our elders, you know, out on country, you know, to have that discussion about how we like to manage without any interference. You know, how was it like back in the day, and sort of do those assessments by the waters around what plants and animals, you know, the DNA. I'm just excited about the stuff that is happening now with water assessments, and they're able to, you know, get the DNA data to, you know, that informs us of what traditionally would have been around in that area. So those are exciting things that we're able to, you know, take our elders back out on country, and also on the land where we're restoring a lot of, like here we have Knob Reserve. It's bushland up near, you know, beside the river, Avon River, and there's been a lot of restoring up there, and it's always been a place where if you go there, you will never forget the sound of the birds, because there's so many different species of birds. And then you go, you know, further, and like the sounds of the river, and there's fish in the river, but since being able to restore that area, you'll notice more and more. So you know, it's those kind of things that, and then also when we're out on country, being able to sit down with our elders and just record, you know, what their stories were, you know, of when they were younger and what they were taught on country is very important for them to be able to celebrate, you know, surviving and being able to be out on country and have that peace as well. Because as you know, through the years, we have our elders that we're always going to them for advice, and everybody wants to know what the right thing is. We need to take time for them to be able to connect and heal on that country as well. Yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes, and I see there's some questions starting to come through in the chat as well. So if there are other questions, we're going to pull up in about another 10 minutes, and we're going to have a bit of Q&A. So if you've got any questions, certainly start to throw them up there. But Jacob, just on that last comment that Alice has made around our old people, our elders, and their knowledge of what country is and what it used to look like. Can you talk us through your experience up there?
Look, the saying is so true, when you lose an elder, you lose a library. I remember when we first discussed the initial biodiversity project in restoring that wetland, part of the funding that we got to do that was to initially bring people back on country, elders and young people alike. And I remember it was just so rewarding to see old people back on country again, and just remembering the old campsite where they used to live, and particularly Auntie Bina, our auntie. So I think she's 94, and when she was a small girl, she grew up in one of the campsites here, Gumbagee, and her telling the story of how she lived there when we took her back to country and where she grew up, she could remember the trees and specific trees and the connection to country. It was just amazing to watch. And her stories about how when she was a little girl, the very wetlands that we have inundated with noxious weeds, she can remember the geese on those wetlands and flying up over those wetlands. The geese were in such numbers, she said it blocked out the sun. And she can remember the not being able to access certain parts of the country because it was tidal. And that was a big help to all the scientists that we had working with us, because they didn't know that previously that was a tidal area. They had no idea. And it wasn't until her account of how country was back when she was a small girl, 70, 80 years ago, it helped us to plan and do things. So getting people back on country is especially our people, is just so key to not only the health of country, but the health of people themselves,
Yeah, absolutely. Alice, you're an artist as well, and talk to us a little bit around, obviously country for us as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, country means a lot, but it's our stories, it's our library, it's our food source, it's that, tell us how art and that storytelling, I guess, helps around that, and also healing country.
Well, look, I love art. It's our beautiful language. It's our stories and that been passed down, but it's taken me a lifetime. I'm 42, and it's taken me a lifetime to learn what I know, and then like having those special times with elders to be able to tell those stories as well really inspires me, really informs me about the stories I can express through my art. And and I do have messages with a lot of my artwork, but I've been able to learn traditional cultural practices as well, what we used to do on country. So I do some work with possum skin cloaks, and I sew them together, and I tell stories about the land and environmental changes, or there's declining of fish, or dry in the bushlands, and so a lot of those stories come out within my artwork. mining of trees and destruction to build highways and things, you know, affect, you know, our significant places like birthing places and things like that. So I've done a lot of that through my artwork, and recently I was able to design the Vixen, the Melbourne Vixens netball dress, which told the story of the, you know, the bushfires, but also told the story of unity in our community and where people were fleeing from, and the landscape of where they fled from. They went through the rivers and where they gathered to unify and make sure that people weren't forgotten about, and you know, then they moved towards the ocean and, you know, to safer spaces. So my artwork's able to, it's an educational thing, it's a healing thing for me. I, you know, suffer with anxiety a bit, so going back to weaving, you know, and that's important, being able to find the mandra, you know, the weaving grass to be able to do that, and, you know, singing, let myself out to play the guitar, so singing in language, you know, and restoring that. So every part of it is myself learning and giving back to my people what I've learned as well, and expressing it in that way, which is healing, and that connection, tells a connection to country,
Yeah, wonderful. Look, we've got a few more minutes before we're going to open up to question and answers, but I might throw this one to you, Jacob, and else, please feel free to jump in. But look, another thing that Pastor Ray mentioned, you know, in his review, I guess, of COP26, he made a really, I think, profound statement, and he said this. He said the failure of COP was seeing so many people working so hard to find a global solution to this existential problem. And I heard, Jacob, you talking about, you know, the significance of the problem, when First Nations people hold wisdom and solutions. If only others would lower their voice, step back, and give us a seat at the table and allow us to lead. And so, Jacob, the question that I've really got for you is I'll put you on the spot here, Cuz, a little bit, but if I could say, you know, if I can get you to say, and Alice, you might consider as well, on a scale from 1 to 10, you know, how do you think that we sit at the moment within Australia around our ability as First Australians, as traditional owners, to do what Uncle, you know, Pastor Ray is saying there? You know, having, you know, we have the wisdom, we need others to lower their voice, step back and give us a seat at the table. How do you think we're going on that scale between 1 to 10, if 10's the best and 1's the worst?
Look, that's a hard one, because I don't think I'm qualified to speak on a national, if on a national level, but of the relationships.
Talk about your experience here, maybe.
Our experience is that projects will not work if people come in. What I found personally, that if organisations come in and say, well, you know, your wetlands are in a bad state, you need to do this, 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 and this. What I found works is that people come in and say, how can we help you? And then we say, well, we need to get rid of that, and we need to do this, and we need to do that. How can you help? And that's the partnership that made our project so successful. Is that people didn't come in and lead us. We agreed on the common problem, and we worked together a solution. A combination of traditional knowledge and modern day science. And I think that was the key to our projects being successful. But you're right, there needs to be because it's just the thinking, how Indigenous people think, and it's different. But if we can combine our traditional knowledge and the way that we think to solve problems, and like Uncle Ray said, if they can lower our voices and hear what we're saying, and together we work on the problem, that's going to be a whole. That's going to go a long way to working on a lot of our issues around environment.
Yeah, wonderful. And Alice, in a couple of minutes, because I want to open up the Q&A, we've got a number of questions coming in. Yeah, what's your take on that?
Just to add on to Uncle there, like we have a lot to contribute as Aboriginal people to society, to everything. So having us sitting, at the forefront from the beginning, leading conversations, it's about self-determination. It's about, we know how our communities think. We have like a mud map in our mind about who has the skills in this area and who has the skills in that area. So when we have ideas about healing country and things that we want to do on country, if somebody comes in and said, yep, we'll do all that, sit back and, we'll do this. But like having people come in and say, how can we help you do this? It helps us to be able to think about who's in our communities and tie those strengths and cultural knowledge to the different, industries within the communities, I suppose. With in Victoria, having us sitting at the table, negotiating treaty, and we're not negotiating treaty yet, but we're developing those frameworks and having those conversations. That's an example, and we're able to push things like truth telling, and so people, we all learn about the truth of of this country. So we can all sort of move on that journey together. So
wonderful.
Instead of an add-on, like we've got this plan and that plan. We haven't consulted with Aboriginal community yet. We better do that. We don't like to work like that. We like to have somebody, to be a part of that conversation from the beginning. And I think, in my area here in Gippsland, we're doing that with a lot of the other partners and that. And Greening Australia has been a really good example. And hence why I'm here today, because our relationship with a deadly fella, Martin, he asked me to come on today, and we've done some really great work with restoring wetlands and trying to heal country together. So
cool. I'm going to throw to some of the questions now which are coming in. So we'll see how many we can get through of these. But here's a question from Karen. So for both of you, if you had the power, and I'll get one of you to respond, so whoever jumps in first, if you had the power to click your fingers and change one thing to heal country and people, what would it be? Good question. One thing. Click your fingers. Come on, cuz, you always wanted to do this.
Look, if I could click my fingers, just to go back to the way that God intended the country to be in the first place. How it was before we, I mean, even as Aboriginal people, we manipulated country to help us hunt more efficiently and that, but we always did it in a sustainable fashion. It was always sustainability there. If I could click my fingers, I'd just restore it back to how it was.
All right, next question. This one's from Melissa. Actually, I'll come to this one later. This one I'll throw to you, Alice, if that's okay. But a question from Rosalind. How would you begin to share this message of healing country with the younger children in early years at school, so they have hope and not fear?
So it's about nation building. We're building our nation. We now, we have capacity. We're building our capacity and skills and knowledge. So it's about developing opportunities so that our kids and our community can have access to the information, to the knowledge. So here we're developing libraries and digital libraries. We're extracting things from historical societies that will help pieces of the puzzle, from our stories and stuff. Offering, family tree, subscriptions so they can start their own research and journeys. But yeah, those cultural competency sort of packages to be able to go out in schools and the environment that we work in, making sure that it's inviting, it's that the educational elements are part of everything that we do. We're excited here. We're building a big amphitheatre, so a lot of our stories and a lot of our cultural gatherings and a lot of our things will be able to, be done through there. So it's about inviting, but just working with each other, I suppose, to make sure that, like I said before, we're on that journey together. And truth-telling of our country is a really important thing for us to move forward together. So there's not the justification of why we want to do this and why we want to do that. It's about us together and this country healing for us all. Yeah.
Wonderful. Another question, and either of you can answer this one. This question's from James, and I'm interested in this one. But yeah, what helps you to stay resilient and continuing to build a sustainable future? A lot of stuff has gone on in country, and we could feel really affected and impacted by that. But how do you stay resilient?
I'll read real quick. One of the things that I really love in terms of doing research and developing the tools for our people is looking back. We can, yes, like you said, we can focus on the negative side, but then also through that our people were resilient and they did contribute to society, even when colonization and segregation and everything was happening. Our people found ways to keep the culture alive and keep the language alive. And I think looking back and at what our elders fought for and what our elders have done and ancestors in the past, it keeps me resilient, and also looking forward to what my son will inherit in terms of this country and society and the way it is. That's what keeps us keep going. Yeah.
Questions are coming in.
Sorry. Just on that resilience, I think the empowerment of our young people gives me hope. And going back to that previous question, Scott, where with young people, it's getting them to view the country as blackfellas see it, and I'm talking about, we have, as you know, we have many school groups and American universities and conservation young groups that come through here, and it's about getting them to, if I can use the word, feel country, and getting our young people to feel country, whether they're black, white, or brindle, or young Australian kids need to be able to have that spiritual connection to the country, whether they're Aboriginal or not. No matter where they come from, they need to have that connection to country, so they want to look after it, because that's our future. And if our young people coming through have got that that spiritual connection to country, they're going to want to look after it, and that's what I think is encouraging for me personally.
I want to try and squeeze two more questions in, so if I can throw these ones at you, quick responses, please. Where does food and diet, question from Nick, where does food and diet fit into healing country and people? Is there any work being done to restore traditional food sources and access to these foods for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people?
Good question, really good question. I think if we really educated on the broader community on native foods and how much healthier they are for us, and if we started looking at what Aboriginal people ate and the foods that we ate, rather than putting energy into foods that require huge amounts of water and fertilizer, and if we started looking at our native diets and establishing that as as our main food sources, we go a long way to healing people. I can tell you that. You know, it's just it's an amazing some of the stuff our mob survived on, and they didn't have the diabetes and everything that we have today. So that is a really, really good question.
Yeah. So my last question before, and I think this will be the last because I'm sure we won't get many more, another one in after this one, but final question from Lily, and thank you for everybody who's jumped on today and have asked questions. Final question from Lily. Do you think traditional knowledge will be enough to heal country, or will technicality have a part to play as well? So maybe that technicality, maybe science, maybe, you know, that as well. So do you think traditional knowledge is enough to heal country, or will we need other parts?
Can I quickly go first here? Look,
Yes.
I really like that question, because the problem that we have with the environment today is gone beyond our traditional knowledge. We need technology, we need science to combine that with our traditional knowledge to address the issues of today. That's just the way it is, and that's simply because of where we are. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to have a look around and see the huge problems that we have with our environment. But traditional knowledge goes a long way, but it's a combination of both traditional knowledge and modern day science that we need to address the environmental issues of this country.
Anything further to add there, Alice?
No, I think hit it the nail on the head. I think that, you know, it's a journey that we need to take together. And yeah, traditional knowledge, like I came to where I am in this role, come to work for my traditional owner group because it's my turn to learn, and I don't know a lot about the traditional foods, but I'm learning, and a lot of stuff that we're able to do when we go out with Greening Australia is that some of the rangers there have got the knowledge of the traditional foods, and then I've got the story of my elders and that told me stories about this is what they used to eat, but I don't know what they look like and where to find it. So and also, you know, accessing, you know, the caves and all the technology that's needed, the drones and, you know, all the technology and science. I think, you know, it's together, it's a strong combination of you know, really finding ways to heal and protect and preserve country.
Yeah, wonderful. And Lily, if I can just apologise to you because I read that question out wrong. You did say technology, and I said technicality, but that's all good. We got there in the end. So just want to acknowledge that. So look, everybody, we've just about run out of time. In the last couple of minutes, just want to do a bit of a wrap up. Or look, I'm certainly inspired by, you know, sitting and listening to people such as you, Jacob, and Alice, and the work that you've done. I encourage all of us, you know, to continue to kind of engage and connect with our traditional custodians and find ways to get into that knowledge. One thing that we have to acknowledge is, you know, as well in this country and for a lot of First Nations peoples, that our knowledge and history is oral. We keep that by telling stories. We keep that by art, by song, by dance, you know, all of those types of things. And so best way for us to connect and share is to just sit down and yarn. And our old people are so giving around those things. So I encourage you to do that and to continue to kind of connect. Share this information as well with others, you know, in your networks. You'll get a copy of this webinar that'll come out to get emailed to you as well. So certainly feel free to share that. Certainly feel free to reconnect with the panelists and that as well. But yeah, you'll get some information around today's session. So look, thank you everybody. We've got you know, a whole range of other. There were some other questions there we just didn't get time to work through today, but we are out of time. So thank you everybody for participating and just taking an hour out of your very busy schedule to continue to kind of work together. And again, let's ensure that you know, that we can do what we can. I think the power of the people has to continue to kind of to rise and shine in these situations. COP26 has really told us and showed us that Australia is on the decline and on the backward slide in terms of a lot of those key global measures around restoring country, around reducing carbon, around that impact on habitat and environment. So let's continue to kind of push and continue to be resilient around all these things. So thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you around the chat at some stage. But Alice and Jacob, thank you very much again for sharing your wonderful knowledge and expertise. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.